Calvin treated the newly transferred poor student in a very special way. Because I publicly accused her of stealing the class fee, the girl felt that her self-esteem had been humiliated. She left in tears but accidentally fell down the stairs and injured her leg. To avenge her, Calvin locked me out of the door on a stormy night. He accused me in a condescending manner. "Who are you to humiliate Jessica? Without the engagement contract with me, could you have come from the countryside to live in my house as a foster child?" I was caught in the rain all night and was ill for 3 days. In order to compensate me, Calvin's mother suggested that we get engaged after graduation. This time, before Calvin could refuse, I took the initiative to decline. Calvin was taken aback. He didn't know that the first thing I did after waking up was to apply for a transfer to another school. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. I stood at the door of the villa, soaked through. The nanny auntie looked at me with guilt. "I'm sorry, Christina. If I let you in, I'll be fired." I wiped the rain off my face. "It's okay, auntie. Just please bring out my phone for me." Once I got my phone, I could call a taxi and leave to take shelter from the rain. The nanny didn't move and just said in a low voice, "I'm sorry." I paused and didn't make things difficult for her anymore. It was a rainy night approaching early morning. Other than leaning tightly against the wall, hoping that the eaves could block the wind and rain a little, I had no other way out. Calvin had achieved his goal. I don't know how long it had passed. When my arm turned pale from the cold, Calvin and Jessica appeared at the door. The girl blinked in surprise and said nothing. Calvin stared down at me. "Now, are you still unwilling to apologize? 2 hours ago, I would have definitely stuck to my guns and even had an argument with Calvin out of unwillingness. If Jessica hadn't accused me of stealing the class fee in front of the whole class, I wouldn't have been unable to hold back and exposed her in public. Jessica couldn't bear the look of the whole class and ran out and injured her leg. Calvin blamed me for this matter. My self-esteem was suppressed by the instinct for survival at this moment. I only knew that I was so cold that my mind was in a daze. I opened my mouth, and the rain poured into my mouth. "I'm sorry, Jessica." I dragged my heavy body and bowed to her. "I shouldn't have done that." Jessica hid behind Calvin. "But I don't want to forgive her." Calvin held her hand back and soothed her in a low voice. "It's okay." He looked at me indifferently for a while. "It's too late." I swayed and almost lost my balance. The raindrops fell densely on me, as if dragging my whole body down. Calvin looked down at me in a condescending manner. "You publicly accused Jessica. You know very well in your heart whether it was to humiliate her or not." He seemed to smile faintly. "But where do you get the right to humiliate her? Without the engagement contract with me, could you have come from the countryside to live in my house as a foster child? Do you really think you're a princess?" Jessica coughed twice and said in a low voice, "It's so cold. Calvin, can we go back?" Calvin's eyes fell on the hem of her skirt, which was splashed with raindrops, leaving faint water marks. His eyebrows furrowed tightly, and then he held Jessica and closed the door. "Be careful not to catch a cold again." The last ray of light was extinguished. My eyelids were extremely heavy. I might be too tired. I squatted by the door with my knees hugged and fell asleep tiredly. Probably. I won't be cold when I'm asleep. It was warm in the dream. When Calvin was 5 years old, he was as cold and quiet as he is now and didn't like to talk. His parents were going to take him back to live in the city. Calvin ignored them and turned around, leaving them with the back of his round head. He walked up to me and took my hand. "I don't want to be separated from Christina." It was the first time I ate Ferrero, and I was extremely happy. I was bouncing around and didn't pay attention to what he was saying. The two families finally discussed and decided to take me to the city as well and let me live in the Ford family as a foster child. I could also receive a better education. Calvin squatted in front of me, with his chubby cheeks puffed out. Christina, come with me. I was a bit reluctant, but I don't like the city. Calvin was very unhappy and snatched my Ferrero. Then you can't eat it. You won't be able to eat it in the future either. For the sake of the chocolate. I quickly compromised and rushed to grab it in a panic. I'll go with you. Calvin. Give it back to me. Calvin. Calvin. I seemed to murmur and woke up from the dream. I wasn't leaning against a cold and hard wall, but a soft and fluffy down quilt. After reacting for a few seconds, I slowly realized that this was my own room. Christina, you're finally awake. The nanny auntie exclaimed in surprise. It's good that you're awake. You've had a fever for 3 days. I'll go and cook some porridge for you now. After the nanny left, Calvin, who had been standing by my bed and was silent for a while, asked in a low voice, "What did you dream about?" He slowly continued, "You called my name in your dream. I didn't want to bring up the memories and be sentimental. So I just said, I don't remember." My voice was so hoarse that even I was surprised. Calvin didn't ask anymore and handed me a glass of water. I took it. "Thank you." He paused and raised his eyebrows slightly. "You're being polite to me now. I haven't heard you say this word to me for a long time." Calvin was so calm as if nothing had happened. I didn't know what to say and stared at the down quilt with unfocused eyes. It seemed that I had lost all the emotions related to Calvin. I didn't want to question him about why he favored Jessica. I no longer felt jealous, anxious, or panicked. Of course, I wouldn't feel wronged or soft-hearted because of his sudden concern either. It seemed that a single rain had extinguished all my expectations of Calvin. I didn't like him anymore. In the evening, I went downstairs for dinner. Jessica was still at the Ford family's house and hadn't left. She sat beside Calvin as if it were the most natural thing. She was no longer as nervous as she was on the first day she came to the Ford family's house. I chose a seat relatively far away from the two of them and sat down, quietly lowering my head to eat the porridge. Seeing this, Calvin's eyes stayed on me for 2 seconds, but he didn't say anything. Jessica greeted me as if nothing had happened. Her round eyes looked extremely sincere. She asked with a worried expression, "Christina, are you feeling better? Let me touch your forehead to see if you still have a fever." "Okay." When she reached out her hand, it took me a great deal of effort to hold myself back from flinching away. This rain had made me realize Jessica's position in Calvin's heart. Making Jessica angry was equivalent to making Calvin angry. The brief PTSD caused by being in the rain made me unconsciously obedient. Jessica sat back and nodded. "It's okay. You don't have a fever anymore." She rested her chin in her hand and looked downcast. "Christina, I'm really sorry. Although you've also received the punishment you deserved, I still don't want to forgive you, because you really caused me irreversible harm." I held the spoon nervously and looked at Calvin. What did it mean that she hadn't forgiven me? Was she going to tie me up and let me get drenched in the rain again? I was still not fully recovered from my illness and had no ability to resist at all. The nanny brought the dishes to the dining table and served them calmly. "Then when Christina gets a little better in a few days, let her get drenched again. She's too weak these 2 days. She might die outside easily," Calvin said without raising his head. "No one will make her go out and get drenched again." Jessica's smile froze for a moment. "Why, yeah. I didn't say anything either." "Auntie, do you have any issues with me?" The nanny was targeted by her because she was speaking up for me. I hurriedly opened my mouth, wanting to explain for her, but I just happened to be choked by a mouthful of porridge and couldn't stop coughing. The nanny auntie, "I'll go get some water right away." The next second, a slender hand placed a glass of water in front of me. Calvin rubbed my head. His voice was still cold. Why are you in such a hurry? This matter is already over. Do you really think I'll make you get drenched again? Do you think I'm that heartless? In just one night, I was no longer used to his affectionate touch. I dodged his hand by reaching for the water. Calvin didn't notice anything and just asked me, "Are you done eating?" I nodded. He raised his eyebrows and leaned forward as if he was going to pick me up horizontally. I shrank back and asked blankly, "What are you doing?" "Carry you back to your room." I pressed his arm and quickly stood up. No. I can go back by myself. Calvin had little patience and clicked his tongue. He picked me up without allowing any refusal. "You're still not fully recovered. Stop being naughty." "Okay." Over the boy's shoulder, I saw Jessica biting her lower lip tightly and glaring at me. I tensed my body uncomfortably. I couldn't figure out the reason why Calvin was doing this. Calvin's mother came back from abroad the next day. After hearing about this matter, she immediately came to comfort me. "Christina, are you feeling better? I've already scolded this brat for 2 hours. Auntie has avenged you." Calvin stood beside her, rubbing his temple with a headache. She patted my hand and sighed. "Calvin has been too impatient recently. We plan to wait for half a year. After you graduate from high school, you can get engaged first, to make him settle down as well." Calvin's jaw tightened, and his expression turned cold. I refused first before he could say anything. "No need for that, Auntie. There's no rush for the engagement." Calvin was slightly taken aback. He stood there, watching me persuade Calvin's mother gently until she left without saying a word. It was as if he was thinking about something. His Adam's apple rolled, and then he asked as if casually, "On your birthday last year, didn't you say you wanted to confirm our relationship first after graduation?" His eyes slowly moved to my face. "Why aren't you in a hurry now?" Calvin could be quite difficult to understand sometimes. He was the one who couldn't wait to refuse. But when I spoke up and refused for him, he didn't seem that happy either. I couldn't find an excuse to perfunctorily answer him. Fortunately, Calvin's mother came back and called him away, so the topic could end ahead of time. The door was closed, and the room became quiet again. I turned on the screen of my phone. Teacher Laura. Classmate Christina. The transfer procedures will probably be completed in about a week. After all, you'll be in your senior year of high school soon. In order not to delay your progress, you should try to come to school for classes during this period. Calvin's mother flew back abroad in a hurry again. In the villa, it was just me and Calvin left. I went to school and came back home as usual, following the set routine. The only difference was that I no longer pestered Calvin, and I no longer interfered in Calvin's relationship with Jessica. In the past, when I saw the two of them inseparable, I would always hold a cup of milk tea and run to Calvin's seat to complain. "Hey, Calvin, don't you think you should keep a certain distance from Jessica?" The boy was doing calculations on the draft paper and didn't even raise his head. "Reason? Because your girlfriend will be jealous." He stopped writing and sneered softly. "What?" I faced him with a blushing face and said confidently, "Anyway, we'll get married sooner or later. Can't I say that I'm your girlfriend?" Calvin smiled but didn't respond. But he didn't take my words to heart. He would still share an umbrella with Jessica on rainy days and lend his coat to her. Fortunately, now I could ignore all of this very well. After the evening self-study on Tuesday, the driver waited at the school gate early as usual. Calvin carried Jessica horizontally and got into the car ahead of me. He pursed his lips tightly and said in a deep voice, "Jessica fainted suddenly. I have to take her to the hospital right away. You go home by yourself today." After saying that, He paused and looked at me, adding, "Is that okay?" The driver turned around and reminded him, "Christina is still not fully recovered. Is it safe for her to take a taxi alone so late at night?" Calvin frowned tightly. "But Jessica doesn't look well. We can't wait. It would be a waste of time for me to get out and call a taxi now." The driver glanced at the empty passenger seat and was about to speak. I probably guessed that he was going to suggest that I sit in the passenger seat and go to the hospital with them first. But I didn't want to. So I simply interrupted him. "I'll take the bus. There's nothing unsafe about it. You guys go ahead." Calvin quickly told me, "Send me a message when you get home." The driver started the car. 10 seconds later, the rear of the car disappeared around the corner. Not long after I got home, I opened the applet and bought a plane ticket for 3 days later. There was a sound at the entrance. It was Calvin who came back. I held my phone and calmly closed the ticket booking page. I was about to go back to my bedroom when the person behind me called out to me. I turned around. "Is there something wrong?" Calvin walked closer, still carrying the chill from outside. "Why didn't you send me a message when you got home?" "I forgot." I waited for half a minute, seeing that he was looking at me with those eyes whose emotions were hard to define but not saying anything. I planned to bypass him and leave. Calvin suddenly grabbed my wrist, and his tone was serious. "Jessica and I are just friends. This was an emergency today. I would have done the same for anyone else." I was a bit surprised that he took the initiative to explain. I patiently waited for him to finish speaking and then nodded calmly. "I see. I didn't think too much about it." Calvin didn't let go. The look in his eyes as he looked at me was rarely tinged with a trace of panic. In the following 2 days, Calvin seemed to return to the state he was in before Jessica appeared. He went to school and came back home with me, and most of the time during the breaks, he came to find me. We became close again. As for Jessica, although she stole the class fee to collect money for her grandfather's surgery, the people in the class still became wary of her and took the initiative to stay away from her. In the past, because everyone saw that Calvin had a good relationship with her, they could still maintain a superficial politeness. Now that they saw that Calvin was also distancing himself from her, Jessica was more obviously isolated. The day before the transfer, during the break, my deskmate nudged my arm. "Hey, deskmate, you should keep your phone and wallet safely after class these few days. Let me tell you, the other day I was registering the personal information of the classmates in the class in the office, and I saw that Jessica's birthday is tomorrow. I was confused. So what?" She pursed her lips in disbelief. "If she stole once, she might steal a second time. There's a chance that she'll be tempted by money again and steal some money to buy herself a birthday present." A shadow fell in front of me. I don't know how long Calvin had been listening, but his expression was cold. "Are you done?" He had never spoken to a girl in such a sinister tone before. "Hasn't Jessica already apologized?" A trace of mockery appeared in his eyes. "What price does she have to pay for you to let her go?" The former Calvin wouldn't be so mean. It seemed that Jessica had really changed him a lot. My deskmate was a bit angry. "I'm just being more vigilant. And it's no big deal. And what does it have to do with you?" "Calvin, you're speaking up for her so much. Do you like her?" Calvin suddenly looked at me. I averted my gaze, feeling a kind of calm as if I were an outsider. He casually retorted, "Can't I stand up for my friend?" Then he left without showing much emotion. Calvin was still like this. The more he cared, the more he would act indifferent. After the evening self-study, the head teacher called me to the office. "The transfer procedures are done. Your flight is tomorrow, right? Coincidentally, there's a rest day on Sunday the day after tomorrow, and you can directly go to class the day after that without any delay." I nodded and bid my last farewell to this teacher who always put studying as the top priority but would still show a little bit of tenderness occasionally. On the way back, I tilted my head and looked at the scenery outside the window that was quickly receding. After so many days of being calm without any waves in my heart, I finally felt a bit down. When I got home, Calvin didn't take the initiative to find topics to talk about like he did in the previous few days. He also seemed very absent-minded. During dinner, my deskmate sent me a screenshot. It was an Instagram post by Jessica. If I still spend my birthday alone this year, I won't celebrate my birthday next year. The attached photo was of her sitting by the bridge with her legs hanging in the air, and below was the bottomless river water. Deskmate, what does she mean by this? Could she be planning to commit suicide? Almost at the same time, Calvin's chopstick slipped from his hand and fell to the ground across the dining table. The hand holding his phone was clenched so tightly that the veins popped out. His voice was hoarse, a result of trying his best to suppress the trembling. I have something to go out for. Eat by yourself first. I nodded and picked up a pea. Okay. Calvin got up in a hurry and put on his coat, but he suddenly stopped at the entrance, holding the doorknob. He said, "Christina." I tilted my head to look at him and let out a questioning hum. The light from the ceiling spotlights shone thinly down, making the emotions in Calvin's dark eyes even more intense. "I've thought about it." He stared at me. "Getting engaged after graduation isn't such a bad thing either. Wait for me to come back, and we'll finalize this matter with our parents." Okay. Jessica's home was in the suburbs, over 100 kilometers away from here. Before I left, he wouldn't be able to come back in time. I blinked and said softly, "Sure." Calvin seemed relieved and closed the door as he left. I quietly finished my meal, went back to my room, and packed my luggage. At 10:50 p.m., I set an alarm for 5:00 a.m. the next day, turned off the lights, and went to sleep. The next day, before dawn, while I was checking the things in my suitcase, I received a call from the head teacher. "Sorry, Christina. I just saw the notice sent to me by the Academic Affairs office last night, saying that there's something wrong with your transfer procedures, and it has to be postponed for another week. Haven't you left yet?" I slumped down on the carpet and sighed. "No, teacher. That's good. That's good. Don't forget to come to class as usual on Monday." I put the suitcase back in the cabinet. I changed the ticket and lay back on the bed to continue sleeping. I slept until the afternoon, and Calvin still hadn't come back. The nanny, as if afraid that I would be angry, whispered while observing my expression, "Just now, Henry called and said that there's no need to cook for the young master tonight. They went to the suburbs last night and happened to see that Miss Lynn, who fell and got injured last time, fall into the water. Now the young master is taking care of her in the hospital." Henry was the driver of the Ford family. I was just a bit surprised. Did Jessica really plan to commit suicide? I casually nodded. "Then we can just have a simple meal tonight. Auntie, do you need my help?" Before the nanny could reply, my phone rang. It was Calvin's mother. "Christina, I heard that Calvin stayed up all night taking care of his classmate in the hospital and didn't come home." "Oh dear. Staying up late is so bad for the body. Ask the nanny auntie to stew some soup, and please take it to him and make sure he drinks it up." Calvin's mother had always been nice to me. I agreed. "Okay. I'll go later. Don't worry." When I arrived, Calvin was sitting by Jessica's bedside, wiping her hands while she was asleep. He turned his head and looked at me when he heard me come in, and his hands didn't stop. "You're here," I said. "Auntie asked me to bring you the soup and told you to drink it while it's hot." Both of his hands were occupied, so I lowered my voice and asked, "Do you want me to serve you a bowl?" Calvin lowered his eyes and said listlessly, "No need. I'm not hungry. Give it to Jessica when she wakes up." I blurted out, "But Calvin's mother said it was stewed for you." After all, the task assigned to me by Calvin's mother was to make sure he drank the soup. Calvin stopped what he was doing and looked up. There was a hint of impatience in his tone. "It's just a bowl of soup. What are you being so picky about? If it wasn't for you causing her to hurt her leg before, she wouldn't have fallen into the river last night because she lost her balance. Do you know that she almost lost her life?" Calvin always seemed to have a hard time controlling his emotions when it came to Jessica's matters. I was used to it after experiencing so much in the past. I didn't know what to say. Holding the thermos, I stood there in silence. After the air seemed to freeze for a moment, I pursed my lips and said, "Then I'll leave the soup here. Remember to drink it later." I had completed the task. I pushed the door of the ward open and left quietly. The sound of rapid footsteps approached from behind. Calvin followed me out. He grabbed me, and a trace of weariness appeared on his face. "Sorry. I didn't mean to take it out on you. The situation was too critical last night. And I'm still scared." I didn't pay much attention to my words. Compared to the more hurtful words he had said to me during our previous arguments, this was really nothing. But I couldn't help but resist his physical contact. I pulled my hand away and then said, "I didn't take it to heart. By the way, Calvin, about what you said last night about getting engaged after graduation." "Christina," he interrupted me, speaking a bit quickly, "Jessica hasn't woken up yet, and I'm not in the mood to talk to our parents about it now." He turned his face away, avoiding my gaze. "Let's talk about it later." "Okay. After all, there's no rush for the engagement. There are still half a year until graduation, right?" Calvin's understated tone couldn't hide the tension between the lines. Obviously, he thought I was urging him to finalize the engagement after graduation. I looked at him calmly. "Just right. I also wanted to tell you that I thought about it last night, and we should still wait until after graduation. It's not a good thing to get engaged too early either." I thought about my twists and turns with the transfer procedures and sighed. Otherwise, if something happens that requires us to cancel the engagement, it will be very troublesome then. Calvin slowly turned his head, expressionless. "What kind of thing would require canceling the engagement to handle?" "Well, I mean if." Calvin's lips tightened into a straight line. "There's no such possibility." I realized for the first time how difficult it was to communicate with him. Just then, the elevator arrived and the door opened. I didn't respond to his words anymore. Went in, and pressed the floor button, until the door closed. He was still staring at me intently. In the evening, when Calvin came back, he was still on the phone. He put the phone on speakerphone and carelessly threw it on the coffee table in front of me. The voice of Calvin's mother came through the phone. "You brat. I just found out that the classmate you went to take care of is that girl who hurt her leg and stayed at our place last time. Don't you have any feelings for her?" "No." Calvin stood in front of the sink, took a cup, and poured water. "Just an ordinary classmate." I didn't quite understand why he put the phone on speakerphone. I stood up from the sofa and was about to go back to my room. Calvin came over and sat down, then pulled me back to sit beside him. Calvin's mother let out a cold snort. "You'd better be. Don't forget. My daughter-in-law can't be anyone else except Christina." Her tone was so firm that it gave me a headache. Calvin let out a scoff. "I haven't forgotten. I haven't considered anyone else either. Are you relieved now?" Calvin's mother mumbled something like, "That's more like it," and hung up the phone. He casually crossed his arms and looked at me. "See, your mother-in-law is really on your side. What about you?" Do you suspect me and Jessica? Do you want to check my phone? He twirled the phone with his fingertips and held it in front of me. I wasn't used to his such affectionate tone. I got up as if fleeing and said, "No need. There's no need for this. Calvin, this is your privacy." I reluctantly glanced at the TV show that I was really into. I'd better go back to my room and watch it on the small pad. I turned around and went upstairs. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Calvin sitting alone on the big sofa. His figure seemed a bit lonely. On Monday, Jessica had already been discharged from the hospital. Her face looked a bit pale and sickly, and she occasionally coughed a few times. During the break, she suddenly came to find me. "Christina, I want to ask first. Do you have a boyfriend?" She was asking a question she already knew the answer to, and even my deskmate couldn't stand it. My deskmate sneered while writing notes and said, "Everyone in the class knew that I had a betrothal agreement with Calvin." I denied it listlessly. "No." Then, an obvious gaze fixed on me. I followed the gaze and looked over. Calvin was staring at me intently, exuding a low pressure. I couldn't figure out why he was angry. Before, when I unilaterally declared myself his girlfriend, he had never admitted it. Even after Jessica appeared, he personally denied our relationship. He just said that the engagement was casually mentioned by the parents and didn't count. We were just friends who grew up together. I was confused and averted my gaze, and heard Jessica say in surprise, "It's like this. The PE monitor of the next class said that last week he entered the school without his student ID card, and you didn't deduct his points. He's really grateful to you and asked me to ask if he can invite you to dinner after school tonight." Eating outside meant that at least I didn't have to take the same car as Calvin and go home together. By the time I got home, he would have already gone back to his room. I could also avoid meeting him. Thinking of this, I agreed. "Sure, I'll write down my phone number for you, and you can ask him to contact me after school." Jessica walked back with the piece of paper with some difficulty, passing by Calvin's seat. She asked him excitedly, "Calvin, when you send me home tonight, can we take a detour to the fresh produce supermarket? I want to bring you the bento I made tomorrow." So Calvin didn't plan to go home with me in the first place. He rarely spoke to Jessica in such an indifferent tone. "I have something to do tonight. I'll call a taxi for you. You can go home by yourself first." Jessica's smile faded a bit. After a long while, she let out an "ah" and said softly, "Okay, then you go and get busy. Don't worry about me. I can go home by myself." Calvin rarely ignored her and just gave a perfunctory hum. Jessica's body stiffened, and she didn't move for a long time. In the evening, after I finished dinner and got home, Calvin was sitting on the sofa in the living room with his back to me, idly flipping through the TV channels. "Did you eat enough outside?" There was a hint of mockery in the boy's light tone. It sounded very harsh. I slowed down the movement of putting down my school bag and asked back in confusion, "Is there a problem?" I felt that my tolerance for him was getting lower and lower. "Calvin, you and Jessica used to go out for dinner often, and I never questioned you about it." Calvin threw away the remote control and walked up to me. Maybe because he had just taken a shower. His hair was lying obediently. "Okay, I was wrong." He looked directly into my eyes, and his dark pupils were full of seriousness. "If you don't like it, I won't have dinner with her in the future. I'll also keep a distance from her. Christina, if there's anything else you're not satisfied with, just say it all. After solving these problems, let's make up." "Okay." Calvin's voice lowered. "Do you know that you've changed a lot recently? You wouldn't be this cold to me before." I looked at him in surprise, not expecting him to say such words. Maybe he wasn't used to my current attitude. After hesitating for a long time, I still shook my head. I'm not dissatisfied with anything. I think this current state is quite good. We don't interfere with each other. And in 5 days, I'm leaving anyway. Calvin didn't back down, and his young master's temper flared up again. But I don't like it. He frowned and stepped closer to me. What do I have to do for you to go back to the way you were before? The original way. The way I used to chase after him. Even though he left me behind countless times because of Jessica, ignored me, and sneered at me. Yet I still liked him and would never get tired of it. I looked at him calmly and remained silent. Obviously, he also realized something and pursed his lips. I'll change too. He tugged at my sleeve. Really? In my impression, Calvin had never acted coquettishly before. The nanny came downstairs with a floor cloth. When she saw me, she quickened her pace. Christina, you're finally back. Master, will you eat this time? She let out a long sigh. Christina, you don't know. The master didn't eat all night. He insisted on waiting for you to come back and have dinner together. You know, he has a stomach problem. Isn't he torturing himself? I pulled my sleeve back from Calvin's hand, feeling a bit angry. You clearly knew I wasn't coming back for dinner tonight. Calvin's face was a bit pale, probably due to low blood sugar from being hungry for a long time. He lazily turned his face away, adopting an attitude of whatever you say. Calvin's moral coercion was like an invisible hemp rope. It bound me, and the rope tightened quietly. It deprived me of my breath bit by bit. In the end, I agreed to make up with him. There were only a few days left. There was nothing I couldn't tolerate. Calvin seemed to do as he said. He distanced himself from Jessica and got close to me again. However, I wasn't happy about it. After school at noon, Jessica's leg injury still hadn't healed. She slowly walked up to us, leaning against the wall. She handed the beautiful and brand new thermal box in her hand to Calvin. Here. I made it this morning. Consider it my thanks for you taking care of me in the hospital. Calvin looked up and glanced at it. No need. It was just a small favor. He took out a bottle of milk from his school bag, inserted a straw, and naturally put it into my hand. What do you want to eat for lunch? Standing beside them, I could feel Jessica's embarrassment, but he didn't seem to notice at all. When Calvin was cold-hearted, he wouldn't show any mercy. Anything is fine. I squeezed out these 3 words uncomfortably. Calvin nodded and walked outside the school with me. Jessica stood there. I passed by her and accidentally touched the wall of the thermal box. It was still warm. When she prepared this bento, she must have had a lot of expectations. 2 days before I left, that is, on Thursday, during the break, someone suddenly mentioned it. Who knows where the thief girl has gone? She hasn't come to school for several days. I haven't been worried about my phone being stolen these days. The class monitor gave him a glare. Watch your mouth. Jessica's grandfather didn't make it and passed away. She took a week's leave. The person shut up resentfully, but someone else hesitantly picked up the conversation. I heard that she sold the house in her hometown to gather enough money for the surgery. Now the house is gone, and the only relative, her grandfather, didn't survive either. She must be really devastated. My God, could she? The words, commit suicide, weren't spoken out, but everyone understood and fell silent simultaneously. I saw the Instagram post that Jessica sent on her birthday a few days ago. I didn't think she would go to extremes for Calvin either. Fortunately, it really wasn't the case. But this time, it's hard to say. Calvin didn't show any reaction, like a calm bystander. However, when we got home after school in the evening, he went back to his room and came out with a small suitcase. holding the handle of the suitcase. Calvin said to me with difficulty, "I've been trying to contact Jessica all afternoon, but I couldn't get through to her. I'm her only friend in this city. I can't just leave her alone. Christina, I promise this is the last time." He said he had taken a leave of absence and had to stay with Jessica for a few days until her mood improved. He even emphasized that he would stay in a hotel and could send me the location every night to prove it. He must have composed this explanation in his mind many times to be able to be so meticulous. I even felt tired for Calvin. I moved my lips. "Okay, go ahead," Calvin assured me several more times before leaving. The day before I left, I emptied all the books from my desk and said goodbye to my deskmate and a few classmates who were on good terms with me. They were determined to see me off and reserved a private room in a restaurant outside the school after school in the evening. Calvin sent me a hotel location as he did the day before. "I'm back. Have you arrived home?" If I didn't reply within half an hour, he would call. I typed on the keyboard, "No. I'm having dinner with my deskmate and the others." "Why did you suddenly decide to have a get-together?" Just as I was thinking about how to reply, Calvin sent another message. "For the engagement banquet after graduation. If you want to invite them, remember to tell them in advance. Otherwise, basically after the college entrance examination, they will all go traveling." I replied with an, "Okay," and put away my phone. At night, before going to bed, Calvin sent another message. "I'll be back tomorrow morning." I saw it but didn't reply. I finally checked the departure time, set the alarm clock, and went to bed at 6:25 a.m. The next day, I boarded the plane and found my seat. After composing a message to Calvin's mother, including canceling the betrothal agreement, the transfer, and apologizing for leaving without saying goodbye, I deleted all of Calvin's contact information, took out the old phone card, replaced it with a new one, and turned off my phone. At the same time that the sun crossed the horizon, the plane took off. Jessica's mood had improved a lot originally, but as soon as she saw Calvin holding the suitcase, she became downcast again. "Are you going to leave me again?" She quietly shed 2 tears. "I don't want to be alone now. Can you take me to your house? I won't cause you any trouble." In the end, Calvin still took her with him in the car. He turned his head and looked out the window listlessly. He thought that Christina should be able to understand his helplessness. After all, Jessica's mood could be unstable at any time now, and she really couldn't be left alone. At 10:00 a.m., the car stopped in front of the Ford family's villa. Jessica got out of the car a bit slower. When she entered the door, she happened to hear the nanny carefully saying to Calvin, "Christina must have left before dawn. I just saw the farewell message she sent me when I woke up today." Almost imperceptibly, after a moment, he said indifferently, "Sorry, I have a girlfriend." "Is it Christina?" Jessica wasn't surprised by his rejection. Calvin nodded. "We're going to get married in the future." Jessica laughed, with a hint of confusion and mockery. "Do you know what it means to have a conflict within oneself?" Calvin looked at her. She continued, "Wasn't it you who told me personally that you were just friends with her? Weren't you the one who hurt her again and again? Now that Christina has left and doesn't like you anymore, you're still lying to yourself and using her as an excuse to reject others." Jessica suddenly felt that Christina was also quite pitiful. If this continued, she would become the next Christina. She hadn't been with Calvin for that long, so she was able to pull away in time. She saw his true nature clearly. "Do you think you're being affectionate like this?" Jessica gradually stopped smiling and looked at him calmly. "You were wavering between me and Christina, not willing to give up on either of us. On the surface, you seemed soft-hearted and didn't want to hurt either of us. But in fact, you were just cowardly and greedy." Calvin didn't move and listened to her in silence. Was this what he looked like in Christina's eyes after she stopped liking him? Jessica had been feeling restless every day this week because of his cold violence. She wanted to send him a message. But when she saw that several of her previous messages hadn't been replied to, she stopped typing. Every time her phone vibrated, she would quickly check if it was a message from Calvin. At school, he avoided her even more. But she didn't even know what she had done wrong during this time. She didn't drive Christina away. She only got close to him after Calvin said that he and Christina were just friends. It was when the head teacher called her to the office after school last night to talk about her being distracted in class recently and her declining test scores that she was able to break free from this anxious state of mind. She wasn't Christina. She didn't have the capital to slack off. That's why she stopped him here to draw a line with him. Jessica took a step back and looked at the boy who had made her feel her heart flutter for the first time. Calvin, I won't like you anymore. Because you really don't deserve it. Except for your good looks. You're really rotten inside. She closed her eyes slightly and smiled. Although I'm not a good person either. I stole the class fee, viciously provoked Christina, and framed her. But I've never done anything sorry to you. I really did like you wholeheartedly. Her sincerity was always valid when facing Calvin. Perhaps because she empathized with Christina. Before leaving, she gave Calvin a piece of advice. If you have even the slightest bit of true feelings for Christina, don't bother her anymore. Rather than your confession of guilt, she hopes to be able to focus on the college entrance examination in peace. Jessica left. Only he was left standing there. The breeze fluttered his clothes. Calvin suddenly laughed at himself. How had he fallen to such a state? After I got home. At first, my dad would occasionally receive calls from Calvin. He wanted my contact information. I was worried for a while that he would come looking for me. Fortunately, he didn't call again later. He must have calmed down and gradually forgotten about it. I felt at ease and focused on catching up with the progress and preparing for the exam. After the college entrance examination results were announced, seeing Calvin again felt like a lifetime ago. He stood downstairs of my house, looking a bit shy. Long time no see. Christina. I was still holding a garbage bag in my hand. Do you have something to find me for? He nodded and put the exquisitely wrapped gift box in his hand into mine. Congratulations on getting into the top 15 in the city. As if afraid that I wouldn't accept it, he added. My mom asked me to give it to you. I took it. Thank Calvin's mother. Calvin didn't speak for a long time, and I was getting a bit impatient. If there's nothing else, I'll go back. As I turned around, he spoke up. Sorry. Although I know this word may be insignificant to you now. I wiped the rain off my face. It's okay, Auntie. I caused you a lot of pain and said a lot of hurtful words. He murmured softly. It was me who couldn't live without you at the beginning. It was me who insisted on taking you to the Ford family's house. I looked at his lonely and repentant expression for a few seconds and nodded. I hear you. I'm leaving now. This time, Calvin didn't stop me. Actually, it wasn't insignificant. I had made peace with all the past pain, but it didn't mean I didn't care at all. His apology was like completely removing the cotton residue left in my heart. In the future, when I thought of these things again, I would no longer feel a slight tightness in my heart and a trace of discomfort. At the end of August, I dragged my luggage and entered the school. There were many life mottos posted on the school campus. I stopped in front of an old motto board and felt the wind from all directions. I have been struggling with myself for a long time, and I would rather be myself. The end of the full text.